Welcome back. COVID coming over the border. The Biden administration is preparing to vaccinate migrants amid fears of COVID-19 spreading throughout the country, which it is already doing. Take a look at these numbers. 210,000 people apprehended at the border in the month of July after 188,000 in the month of June, as McAllen, Texas approves a temporary emergency shelter in response to the city's overwhelming number of migrants. Joining me right now is Georgia Congressman, Energy and Commerce Committee member Buddy Carter. Congressman, thanks very much for being here. I love the way the Biden administration is now saying that it's going to vaccinate people. Why hasn't this been done already? 900% increases in COVID among migrants in the month of June over June of last year. 900%.
Absolutely. And it's a great question. I mean, let's face it, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have abandoned their responsibility to secure our border. And by doing that, they have turned every state in America into a border state. And it's a threat to our national security, but it's a threat to our national health as well. I've been to the border twice this year. And what I've seen both times, the first time I went with the Doctors Caucus as a pharmacist, I'm a member of the Doctors Caucus. We went down there to see about the unaccompanied children. And let me tell you, they had children who were testing positive for COVID. They tried to separate them, but they had such overcrowding that I can tell you there's no way they were able to control this. The second time I went with President Trump. And I had hoped that I would see some improvement. There had not been any improvement. We still had overcrowding. We still had people who were children and other immigrants who were testing positive for COVID, and then they were being mixed in with other children and other people, and it was spreading like wildfire. And then they're being released into our communities, making our communities, putting them at risk and putting all of us at risk. So it's a national security risk. It's also a health care risk in our country as well.
Of course it is. And I don't understand what the point is here. What is the motivation for keeping these borders wide open during a pandemic where you have COVID coming in and the rest of the world does not have the vaccines the way that the United States has as much? So, of course, COVID is going to be coming over the border. I don't understand this, and I don't know why the president is not being pressed on this issue. I know last week you introduced the empowering. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're right. Last week I did introduce the Empowering Law Enforcement Act. And the reason I did that is because, as I say, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have abandoned their responsibility to secure our border. They've abandoned their responsibility to enforce our immigration laws. And what the Empowering Law Enforcement Act will do will be to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to give local and state law enforcement the authority to enforce our immigration laws, the authority to arrest people, to detain people, and transfer people who are here illegally to federal custody. Listen, I'm never going to stop fighting to protect our citizens and protect our cities. And this is the only way we're going to do this, because obviously the Biden administration, led by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, aren't going to take their responsibility serious of securing our border and of enforcing our immigration laws.
Well, I mean, I'm having a hard time finding any policies here that have been good for the American people. I mean, let's talk energy policy. You're on the Energy Committee. Yesterday, I spoke with Doug Burgum. He's the governor of North Dakota, energy-producing state, about energy policy. Here's what he said about current policy and what it's doing to the American people. Watch this.
The previous administration, for the first time really since World War II, our nation achieved a situation where we could sell energy to our friends and allies versus buy it from our enemies. That was $2 gallon gas. That was manufacturing jobs returning to the U.S. That was us not having to send our troops to the Middle East. That was very smart for our country. Right. And reversing that on all fronts makes no sense right now. We need fuels that can transition into the future.
Congressman, what about that? You're on the Committee for Energy. How do you see things?
Well, he's exactly right. We've finally achieved energy dominance in this country. And what do? We're throwing it away. And what is the president? The first thing he did was to do away and to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline. Yet he approves in Europe of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Makes no sense whatsoever. We realized in the late 70s that we had to have energy independence. And we achieved energy independence and energy dominance. And now he's throwing all that away. And the same thing is happening in healthcare. What we've realized during this pandemic is that we've got to have pharmaceutical independence because we're too dependent on China and India and foreign countries for our PPE and for our pharmaceuticals. Now we've got to repatriate those companies back to America so that we can have that independence. Listen, we've got to have pharmaceutical independence. We've got to have energy independence. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said time and again that one of the best things that he had going for him when he was Secretary of State was knowing that we had energy dominance in the world.
Of course. And look, you make a great point about prescriptions. We've only been saying this for the whole year and a half of this pandemic. Why hasn't moves been put in place to begin this? Congressman, it's great to see you. By the way, Marsha Blackburn wants to get that XL pipeline in the infrastructure bill. Why not? Congressman, it's great to see you. We'll be following all of this and keeping a spotlight on it. Congressman Earl Carter. We'll be right back. Stay with us.